Alrighty, so I wanted to do something different aside from just writing this all down because I had a million and one thoughts, but I needed some visualization to organize it. So I've learned so much from this class that honestly, this is a real life project of meaning, of love, of genuinely learning from this class. So that's why I have entitled this "My Pursuit to Happiness" through the lens of Education 309. And so I wanted to do something that really represented who I was. And so I tend to compartmentalize my thoughts and pick up things similar to what you do on a desk. When you want to pick up something, you go for it, you look at it, that's what you do. So that's what I did here. And so, first place, I really wanted to touch bases with was the experience and digging into the background files. Because we talked a lot about understanding who we are to understand where we're going. And so, what did it mean growing up middle class? How did that differ from being lower class? I'll later get into characters or whatever that I now identify with and I see myself as. But what does being middle class mean? And we talked about being middle class in a sometimes marginalized sense when discussing freedom night theory, in the sense that the middle class is now not as comfortable as what it used to be. So what does that mean for me? Secondly, African American, um, being a part of a displaced community. And one of the first exercises that we did was defining home. And I remember struggling with that, not because I was a military brat and I lived all over the place, but I remember struggling with that because I couldn't really put a pinpoint on some place that I could say, this is my lineage. This is something that I know I own by heritage. Because we're just such a displaced people. So embodying home culture is the embodiment of creating a homage, I think, for African American people. And being female, um, of course, that's something that differs from being male. And to have a class full of females, I think was interesting because the female experience still differed among all of us. You would think that it would be a class of so much similar ideas because we were all females. We were pretty much all been catcalled at or whatever. And then you had Eric. But there were so many different experiences as females. There was never a story repeated. That is what brought to light so many different things, and realizing and discussing things now such as feminism. There is a shared experience, but there also is so many stories within that shared experience. And so throughout the course, of course, we read different literature or whatever. So I titled this little section Alter Egos. And these are the people that I call on. So you know how you have this on your desk and you go through this whenever you need to call somebody or contact information. So sometimes I see myself being lazy, in which I now document things, I question things, I call my mom and I ask her, okay, what does this mean? And also having this big enlightenment experience while being in college. That is definitely something that I've had, where just coming to terms with what it means to be black, what it means to be African American, the difference between the two, and all in the in between. Um, that to me is what I can say that sometimes I'm like, wow, I'm really lazy today. And then Phaedrus from Lila. Um, Friend request in the middle of my video. But Phaedrus from Lila, because once again, questioning things, not accepting things for what they are. Because I mean, we could have got him Phaedrus for who he was and his semi-racial comments, but he still did not accept the fact that European Americans were not the originators of this American culture, and which she did trace back to Native Americans. And that is the start of something powerful, when you can realize that this does not belong to me. This is who it really belongs to. And chasing after that and discovering that, and then questioning that, questioning your societal norms and why you think the way you do. So why do I think it's acceptable for a guy to catcall me? Why do, as a female, I just brush it off my shoulder? But also, one thing that Figures did was seeing the good in somebody and realizing that, yes, seeing the good in somebody is amazing and it's beautiful, but you have to also face harsh reality. And obviously, that's something that Lila was trying to escape, and Phaedrus, in my opinion, was trying to illuminate, because he realized that he was only seeing. He wasn't seeing the true Lila. He was seeing all these multiple Lilas. But when he saw the real Lila, she was so just put together so many different things. He wanted to illuminate that. And this might be a shocker, but sometimes I do see myself being Mr. Milton Friedman. Now, I'm not to the extreme where I would go out there and cause some type of big economic uproar, but in the sense of Milton Friedman was trying to be the savior of his time. And I can relate that currently to maybe being a Steve Jobs or being a Mark Zuckerberg. So they are the saviors of their current times, and their solutions were thought to be the cure of this next big movement that we needed in world history. I could see myself getting caught up in that. I think I can offer so many solutions and solutions and solutions and solutions, but am I really analyzing the effects of the solutions that I'm putting out? Am I being inclusive of everybody? So inclusivity is something that sometimes I can see myself lacking, and being caught up on being this big savior of time, in which there's a quote that later on explains that here in the class notes. But starting off with Compassion is Not Finite, which in The Morning After by Roxane Gay, and realizing that people grieve differently. That was something hard for me to really understand, because, I mean, if it's a sad situation, then you cry. If it's an angry situation, then you're upset. So to see people not be upset at situations or experiences such as police brutality, or not want to rally behind the Black Lives Matter movement, it really opened my mind into thinking it's not that they don't care. It's just that their form of compassion is not going to be shown the same way yours is. So to say that they don't care would be a false assumption. But never allow somebody to define something is to make it subordinate. And when you do that, you destroy the real understanding, which is within this next quote. So explaining to them what Black Lives Matter, if you feel like they're not compassionate about it enough. And don't let them have this one-rooted understanding of what it means to be Black, or what it means to have a Black story, or what it means to be a Black Lives Matter supporter, that I somehow experience police brutality. Because I don't have to identify solely with that that definition to say that I am a part of the movement. And so when you define something to just police brutality, like this quote says, you destroy the real understanding, because it goes far beyond Baltimore. It goes far beyond all these other locations in South Carolina. It is the embodiment of literally the title of the movement. Understanding that Black Lives Matter. And so, in a moment of crisis, people are willing to hand over a great deal of power to anyone who claims to have a magic cure, going back to Milton Friedman, um, being the Steve Jobs and the Mark Zuckerberg of time. They had the magic cure. And even though sometimes we find it hard to address the effects of their solution to whatever problem was existing at the time with the internet, it's that we've created this selfish generation. We've misused these things that were probably intended for good, which I think can somewhat relate again to Milton Friedman. And so, looking at, in which I titled this quote unquote Southern Heaven, and I wanted to look at the campus setting. So, what does UNC stand for? What does it really mean? We've addressed that so many times within the class. And this idea of diversity, does it even really exist? And are we learning or retaining? I'm able to go about this presentation because I learned, in which we talk about a lot, and how we just retain. And we've gone over so many different methods of learning styles and different things like that that I now will take with me far beyond, because I've taught myself how to learn information as opposed to retaining it. Um, and so these are some things, because your laptop you carry everywhere with you at UNC. You never know when there's a last minute assignment due. But these are some things that I live by. If it's on my laptop, it's like a tattoo to me. And so listening and empathy go hand in hand. And I love that video by Mrs. Brown. She breaks it down so well, and I share it so many times. And it's opened my ears up so that way I can better understand politics and then the world around us. And so when I go on to social media now, I practice listening, and I practice as if I was doing chautauquas. And I think the hardest thing about chautauquas was not hearing the story. It was the fact that it's at 6 o'clock, my body's tired, but do I care enough to awaken my body and listen? I do, and I have to practice that because I owe everybody that respect because their story is beautiful. But the most obvious important realities are often the most hardest to see and talk about, and that's coming from This Is Water, which we watched in class, and how we can talk about social media in a positive light, but once again, going back to what we discussed earlier, maybe not discussing it in the negative light. We can talk about politics in the positive light, but let's not discuss the Friedmanite theory. We have to discuss those things. We have to listen and be empathetic towards those. And lastly, the light, where this is all leading to this big picture. And I used the lamp, yes, I did, because now I will go on with this class from it and take so much on it. I am such a much better leader because I know how to follow, I know how to listen, I know how to be empathetic in times that I need to be. And those are skills that I don't think I could learn anywhere else. I loved hearing other people's stories. I now make it a task of mine to once a day go out there and hear somebody else's story, whether that be the lunch ladies or whether that be my mom's or whatever. Open my ears. And I think that is what's going to drive me throughout the rest of my time and hopefully into my future life of being a politician. So I'll let my light shine and illuminate my desk and allow no darkness to cover all these wonderful things that I have learned. Because once again, this is my pursuit to betterness through the lens of education 309.